We've all heard the story of manna from heaven, right? But what if I told you that story is about so much more than just a miracle meal? What if it was actually a radical re education program in economics and psychology for a people fresh out of slavery? Okay, let's dive into the secret economics of the Exodus. And really, this is the question that starts the whole thing. What happens when freedom is actually scarier than slavery? I mean, just try to imagine it. You've been freed after generations of bondage, but now you're out in the middle of nowhere in this huge empty desert. Sure, the certainty of being oppressed is gone, but so is the certainty of your next meal. This question right here, it's the setup for a massive identity crisis. Now, the timing here is just wow. It's incredibly precise. They leave Egypt on the 15th of the month of Nisan. And exactly 1 month later, to the day, on the 15th of Iyar, they get to the wilderness of Sin. This is no accident. This is the exact point where the food they packed, all that unleavened bread, would have completely run out. The crisis hits the very second their own plans and provisions fail. So, that brings us to our first big idea. A crisis of freedom. Because the real problem here isn't just that they're hungry. It's about what that hunger does to the minds of people who've only ever known slavery. It kicks off this deep, deep crisis of faith. And this is what they actually say. It is frankly shocking. They're basically saying, you know what, we'd rather be dead back in Egypt with full stomachs than be free out here and starving. They're dreaming about the pots of meat they had in Egypt. A memory that, as we're about to see, is a little distorted. Okay, now this is fascinating because it really shows you what's going on in their heads. Look at these two columns. In the remembered column, you've got this amazing menu: fish, cucumbers, melons, leeks, onions, those famous pots of meat. It sounds like a banquet. But then you look at what they conveniently forgot: the whip, the back-breaking forced labor, the fact that the Egyptians were murdering their babies. It's a textbook case of romanticizing your past, even a terrible one, when you're scared of the future. So the crucial takeaway here is this. This wasn't just a simple, hey, we're hungry, can we get some food? No, this was an accusation. They truly believed that God had brought them out into the desert just to kill them. It's a complete breakdown of trust, and it's that spiritual problem that the divine response is really designed to fix. Which brings us right to our next section: heaven's bread, earth's flesh. You see, the response they get isn't just a simple airdrop of supplies. It's this brilliant two-part solution that takes care of both their actual physical hunger and that psychological craving for the past they can't seem to shake. And this table just lays it out so clearly. In the evening, they get quail. This is the flesh they were crying out for, right? It's a familiar food, something from the earth. But then in the morning, they get manna, this completely new, totally supernatural stuff from heaven. So one part of the meal satisfies their nostalgia, and the other part is meant to provide for their future. So what even was this stuff, this manna? Well, funny enough, its name literally comes from the question they all asked when they first saw it. They looked at it and said, "Manhu," which in Hebrew means, "What is it?" The name itself is a question. It perfectly captures their complete confusion and awe. They are now depending for their very lives on something they can't even name. And the descriptions are just fascinating. It looked like a fine, fleeky substance, kind of like frost on the ground. The book of Exodus says it tasted sweet, like a wafer made with honey. But later, the book of Numbers says it tasted more savory, like rich cream or cakes baked with oil. So which is it? Well, rabbinic tradition has this beautiful solution. It suggests the manna actually adapted its taste to whatever the person eating it wanted it to be. How amazing is that? It's a sign of incredibly personal divine care. Okay, so now we get to the third part, the rules of the meal. And this is where things get truly revolutionary. Because the manna wasn't just food, it was a curriculum, a school in the wilderness. The rules for how you were supposed to gather it were designed to completely deprogram that slave mentality and teach them a whole new way to live. And it all came down to 3 core rules. First, you have the divine equalizer. Everyone gets exactly 1 omer, which is basically a day's worth of food. No more, no less. Second, the trust exercise. Hoarding is a big no-no. If you try to save any for the next day, it literally breeds worms and rots. You are forced to trust that more will show up tomorrow. And finally, number 3, the freedom declaration. A double portion shows up on the 6th day, so you can take a complete day of rest, the Sabbath. And that first rule, it is absolutely radical. The text says something incredible. No matter if someone gathered a whole lot or just a little, when they got back and measured it, everyone had exactly 1 omer per person. The strongest person couldn't hoard more than the weakest. Greed was made completely useless. It was a supernatural lesson in perfect equity. The whole Sabbath provision was just as mind-blowing. As you can see right here, for 5 days, you get your daily amount. Then, on day 6, boom, a double portion arrives. And on the 7th day, absolutely nothing. It's like the very laws of nature that made the manna work were suspended for 1 day every week. And here's why that mattered so much. The Sabbath was the ultimate rejection of how Egypt worked. Think about it. A slave cannot choose to rest. Their time belongs to their master 24/7. So by stopping all work for an entire day, the Israelites were making a weekly declaration of independence. They were acting out their freedom and showing they trusted in a God who could provide for them even when they weren't working. So, that brings us to our final section, a food for the ages. Because this story didn't just end when they left the desert. Oh no. The manna went on to become one of the most powerful and lasting symbols in all of Western spiritual tradition. I mean, its legacy started almost immediately. A little pot of manna was actually placed inside the Ark of the Covenant as a permanent reminder for everyone to see. As time went on, its meaning got even deeper. In Jewish tradition, it was called the bread of angels, something that could refine your mind to understand wisdom. Then, in Christian theology, Jesus famously references it, calling himself the true bread from heaven. And it goes all the way to the end of the Bible, where the hidden manna is promised as a reward in the book of Revelation. So we're left with this really powerful question, aren't we? The whole lesson of the manna really just boils down to a complete redefinition of what wealth is. The Egyptian model, the slave model, was all about hoarding, accumulating, storing things up. But the wilderness model was about daily trust. It was about having just enough. And it forces us to ask ourselves, what does real security look like? Is it having more than you need, a full bank account, a stocked pantry? Or is it trusting that you'll have enough just for today?